welcome to another episode of Brown Bagging It. I'm your co-host, CJ Powers, and today we have an incredible guest for you. But before we tell you any more, I'm going to tell you that if you want to be here or not, this is why. If you deal with webinars, if you deal with workshops or teaching or any online anything, we have the expert for you to listen to today. She's going to give you tips and tricks that will amaze you. But first, let's get started with our co-host. Guys, how you doing today?
Hello. Good morning.
What are you up to, Marty?
I am up to this show, baby. I am excited about this. I love online presentations, and the expert we have today is going to help me just get better and better. So I'm pumped about today's show.
Good. Christine, how about
Hello,
you?
Christine.
Yeah, creativity is like such a cool, making connections, right, where we didn't see them before, and then producing that. And our guest has done that in a lot of exciting ways. So I'm super excited to learn from her and from you both about creative presentations today.
Well, before we get into that, does anyone have anything unique or special in their brown bag?
Well, actually, it's funny that you say that, Jay. I've kind of learned over time that it's not so much what's in the bag, but it's the presentation. And I started looking at this thinking, this bag has seen better days. And so I have to put forth a more professional presentation. So because of this presenter today, I'm using a brand new professional, clean looking bag. So I'm upgrading.
That's great. Christine, did you happen to have anything in your brown bag today?
Yeah, I tend to try to have a clean brown bag all the time. I did change my sandwiches in a different container. It's a warning.
There you go.
Nice.
This is open, to beware.
Well, guys, normally we'd want to talk a little bit about the whole concept of engaging and captivating people with your presentation and kind of introduce the segment. But I got to say, I'm really excited about our guest. So if you don't mind, I want to jump right in and introduce her, if that's okay with you.
Definitely. Let's do it.
Okay. So our guest is Cat Mulvihill, and she is a trainer and she is an expert facilitator. And I do mean expert. She loves to make life easier for each one of us. And that's the part I love most. But I have to say that I know her a little bit differently. I'm going to call her an enthusiastic nerd. Or maybe a perpetual student. Whichever way you want to look at her. She takes whatever she learns. She has a YouTube page. And she presents the best of anything that she learns so that we can benefit. But I got a real secret for you. I learned a little bit more about her favorite show. Please welcome Cat Mulvihill. Cat, how are you doing today?
I am doing really well. And I have to laugh when you showed Ted Lasso because I made this ludicrous agreement with my significant other. He said, why don't we wait for season 2 to be done and then binge them all at the end? And I said, I don't want to do that. I want to watch every single one as it comes out. And he said, please do this. And so I was willing to go along with it. So I don't know what's going on in Ted Lasso. And it's just mildly killing me a little bit. I've watched the first season 3 times. I love it. And it's taking everything for me to go along with this harebrained scheme of his.
Well, let me give you a quick update on the series. Just kidding. I have to say, I didn't know about it until I heard you talking about it one day, and I don't remember what event we both happened to be at, but you had mentioned that, and at that point I realized, okay, she's talking positive enough about it. I need to check it out and see if it's any good or not. And of course it was good, and not only good, but it won an Emmy. So I was impressed. Kat, you have good taste.
Thank you.
So we're going to dive in right away, and we're going to start asking you questions, if you don't mind. And Marty and I are going to kick this thing off. How's that sound? Marty, would you like to go first?
Sure, sure. So, the idea of presentation, these presentation skills, can you give me a little bit of an idea of the evolution that you've gone through? Because before it was just standing in front of a mic talking to people or standing in front of a whiteboard, PowerPoint. Now it's this, all the things you have to do electronically. Can you give me kind of an evolution?
Yeah, so I definitely came from the in-person presenting background. I spent, I think, 14 years working in the university environment, and one of the things that was a common part of my job was running workshops and facilitating sessions, and I absolutely love to be in front of a group and teach and have those aha moments. And I actually, though, because I started to do some research into side hustles and starting a business and online entrepreneurship, I was actually exposed to the world of webinars and some of this technology before the whole world learned about it. It was actually a pretty solid ecosystem going on. And so I had learned about people like Luria Petrucci from Live Streaming Pros before the world shut down and we had to go online. And the interesting thing, when I look back at the last few years, I had actually been approached by an association that had members spread out all over the province. I'm in Canada, so we have provinces. And they were trying to find a way to have professional development for their members that didn't require them all to travel to a city. And it was prohibitive for some of the members. So I had actually worked with them in the winter of, I guess it was, I don't know, it was 2019 or 20, but it was before COVID sort of stopped everything. And so that was one of my first attempts at running a virtual professional development workshop in that online format. So I was using Zoom. I had it hosted out as a webinar. We had the Q&A. At the time, I just had the regular slideshow, because there's nothing wrong with slides, but when everyone came onto Zoom, then it just became slap some slides up and read them to your audience.
Right.
And so that's when I started to get really frustrated and thought, there has to be a better way to do this. And I had to pivot some of my own events. I had online or in-person events that had been scheduled for 2020 that had to be moved online. And I had to figure out, what can I do to make this interesting? I'm asking people to commit 3 hours of their day, which in person is already long, but to do it in front of a computer, I mean, I just really wanted to make sure that it stood out. And that's where I started to bring in some of this technology using streaming software like Ecamm in order to pull my slides up, in order to have a sidebar, overlays, lower thirds, and bring that into the Zoom environment. And it was definitely noticeable. It stood out and people enjoyed it. It kept them interested. And so then I started to teach people about how to do that.
That's great. You know, one of the things I have to say is that I was one of the people that learned from you. And here's one of the things I learned. Ta-da! And you can even see myself through here. So I have to say, you know, for me, it was fun to learn. You tend to make things not only interesting, but fun too. I've been a part of a couple of your live YouTube shows. And, you know, you're responding generously to the people's comments and stuff. How did you start feeling about that? Was that something that you took to like a fish in water, or did you have to kind of work through that?
That's a great question. I think, as you mentioned before, I'm a self-proclaimed enthusiastic nerd. I love to geek out about things, and I love teaching. I've always loved taking concepts and trying to break them down, and I want people to have those little light bulb aha moments.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that people were coming to me with questions about, how did you do that in Zoom? How did you have your slides beside your head? How did you have that sidebar? They didn't understand it and they wanted to learn it. And luckily I enjoyed teaching it. So I did already have that comfort level and enjoyment of teaching things. And when it came to doing that in a live streaming environment, I do think I sort of gravitated towards it naturally. Definitely it helped that I participated in the Live Everyday in August challenge last year, because that really did help me find a voice that was a lot more comfortable. I think I used to feel like I had to be really put together and polished and a little bit stuffy. And I realized that it actually, when I would laugh at my own mistakes and when I would be a little bit more casual, that really connected with people in a better way.
Yeah. Well, and we know things always go wrong.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. So I was going to ask you about getting over the nerves, but you kind of answered that already. So my question is, what do you think about hybrid meetings, that crossover? How do we make those successful?
That's the question. I think
Yeah.
I have a lot of opinions on it. So my first thing is that sadly, I don't think people even got to a place where they were doing the virtual meetings well. Some did. That was kind of one of my missions, is to try and make those a better experience, more engaging, lift you up instead of drain you at the end of it.
Yeah.
And now everyone's saying, okay, so how do we do the hybrid one well? And I was like, well, you haven't even got the virtual one good. So my concern truly is that people think, oh, great, we're going to have a mix of in-person and virtual, and let's make this hybrid experience good. I have personal experience having worked at a university that was actually across 2 different campuses. And we had rooms, we invested all sorts of money at the university to have boardrooms across both of those campuses so that we could have multi-campus meetings without having people travel back and forth. Fantastic idea. But in practice, when you were at the smaller site and you were joining from the smaller site, and there might be 2 or 3 of you in a room, and then maybe 10 or 12 people at the larger campus, it basically was you were just watching other people have a meeting. And it was really hard. You had to be very, very intentional when you were hosting or facilitating that meeting to make sure the people on the smaller campus were attended to, made sure, do you have any questions, direct things at them. Another issue was, where do you actually set up your camera? So one of the issues we had is if you had slides, let's say behind me at the front of the room, but you had the camera that was showing everyone around the room was actually facing. So you had to figure out, where do I actually stand? How do I look at the people in the room? How do I look at the people who are on the other campus? So I've seen it done, and as far as done well, no. So I think this is going to
Right.
actually be really difficult if you are trying to make connections with people in the room and with people on the screen. And it's going to take a lot more effort than people are probably imagining to do it well, if possible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was hoping you had some magical answer, because I agree with you. I tell people all the time, choose one or the other. Don't mix them. I hosted a hybrid meeting, and it was a nightmare because you don't know who you're supposed to talk to. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Well, and Christine threw in her thoughts here too about having both an in-person and on-screen host. So that's kind of an interesting mix idea too. I've been a part of a couple meetings where, you know, they've tried to do the hybrid, and the main room gets to understand everything that's going on, and the people online get to understand some of the things going on.
Sure.
But the people that try and go back and forth and fit in, they kind of get lost in the mix, you know. What would your recommendation be from the standpoint of, does interactivity help a hybrid situation, or does it make it more difficult?
I mean, I think so. Something I could potentially see, and again, I have not put this into practice, I have not tested this yet, but if you actually had everyone who was in person in front of a laptop and potentially having them collaborate together using, say, a third-party collaboration software like Miro or Mural, and there are a few more, where everyone is still working on the same document together, whether that's an interactive activity like sticky notes and arranging them, and maybe breaking people up into smaller groups where 3 or 4 people work on one while other people work on another. And so then you can actually have it where it's not a presentation the entire time, but it is a collaboration. But you do not have people in the room who are working together and people online working together. You actually still involved every single person, sort of as if they're all remote, if you have any remote people. And so I think you kind of default, if you have remote people, everyone in the room is also connected to them through some sort of means, and that might look like a tablet or a laptop where they're interacting. I think that could be a way that people are on an even playing field.
Sure.
But I think you have to have a lot of trial and error to see what is the best way to do this. It's going to be a very big challenge going forward.
Yeah.
So Kat, we started off by throwing you the toughest question we could come up with. So, so let's just back up a little bit. With all your experience, can you give us something like, for the audience, a top 3 or top 2, something of just online presentations? Because I agree with you, we haven't mastered that yet, and we should. Is there just a couple of key things that everyone should know?
Yes. So I think one thing that is highly underestimated, and yes, it takes some practice, but makes a world of difference, is making eye contact with the camera. People won't necessarily know why they are connecting with you more as a speaker, but when you look directly in the camera, they see you looking directly at them. And it's not just when you're speaking, it's also when you are listening. If somebody else is telling you something and they're speaking, looking directly into the camera is your way of showing that you are listening to them. And I know people will say, but Kat, then I can't see their expression on the screen, and I need to see their expression. To which I would challenge you and say, well, first of all, you can glance down and see how they are. But if you're on a phone call with someone, do you understand their emotion? Do you understand tension? Do you understand what they're conveying? Yeah, you do. We all, I mean, do you remember phone calls? You could actually convey a lot. And I actually find that when someone is speaking to me and I look in the camera and really listen to them, I catch more of what they are saying than if I'm looking at the screen. Because if I'm looking down at the screen and maybe someone's cat walks by in the background and suddenly my eye moves over, I can get more distracted looking at the screen than I can if I'm actually just zeroing in on listening to what that person is saying. And that eye contact really does make a big difference.
Great point. Great point.
That's good. I like that one. I'm going to remember that one. I'm going to picture a cat from now on. Cat told us about a cat distracting us, so we're going to remember to look at the camera lens. But actually, talking about a distraction, we do want to take a little bit of a short, humorous moment. Here we are.
I'd like to dedicate this next story to one of my favorite comedians of all time, Mr. Norm Macdonald, who passed away recently. See, Norm Macdonald worked on Saturday Night Live. He was a stand-up comedian, one of the greatest storytellers of all time. He lived in rural Canada, and he told of a story one day of him traveling through Canada and coming across a farm, and near the fence by the road, he saw this giant pig, a very big pig, with a wooden leg. So Norm pulled over, went to the farmer and said, "I'm just curious, how do you get a pig with a wooden leg?" And the farmer said, "Well, that's not an ordinary pig. You see, years ago, our house caught fire. And me and the missus were sound sleepers. We would have surely perished that night. But that pig saw the flames, knew we were sound sleepers, broke out of his pen, ran to the house, climbed up the stairs, woke us up, saved us that night. That pig is a hero." And I said, "My gosh, is that how the pig lost his leg?" He said, "That is a very special pig." He said, one time, my wife and I, we were working on the North 40, far from the house. And little Billy, my son, clumsy little boy, he was playing in the yard. He tripped and fell right into the well. Well, we were too far. We couldn't hear the screams. But that pig could. And that pig busted out of his pen, ran over there, looked down the well, saw little Billy. And with his snout, he twisted on that rope. He pulled and he tugged and he tugged and he pulled until he saved little Billy's life. Yes, that is a very special pig. And I said, "Well, how did he lose his leg?" And he goes, "That pig? That very special, wonderful pig? Well, let me tell you a story about that pig. You see, one day we were burglarized. The bad men came to our house. They broke down the door. They were ransacking the house as they had me, my wife, and little Billy tied up. Well, we couldn't call the police, and we were so far away, the police couldn't hear our screams, our muffled screams. But that little pig, he busted out of his pen, snuck into the house behind the burglars, got to the phone, and with his snout went boop, 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 and he called the police. And the police were there just in time. They arrested those burglars, untied us, and nothing was stolen. He is an amazing pig." And finally, he said, Well, tell me, how did the pig lose his leg?" "I'll tell you. When you have a pig that amazing, that wonderful, you don't eat him all at once."
Okay, I got it. Whew. That's a tough one. But just as a reminder here, folks, we are speaking with Cat Mulvihill, and we are talking about creating engaging and professional online presentations. So, Cat, it's time to... Oops, what happened there? That's interesting. I've never had that experience.
Hello again.
Yeah, and what are you doing here,
I just
Marty?
changed my shirt.
Yeah,
exactly.
Apparently, I need to.
The top half of her shirt is me, and the bottom half of her shirt is you.
I have never. Let's see if we can fix that somehow. Well, I can't.
I've got to roll with it.
Oh well.
There you go.
Oh, and now all of a sudden you're green, Christine. Boy, you know, you think you have everything all set, and then you find out that you don't. All right, how's that? Uh-oh, and you're muted? Turn your mute off.
No, we can't hear Christine.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say that's a good lead-in for my question for you, Kat, and that's is since doing all these virtual meetings and stuff, there's a lot more people using technology that it's newer to. So what are your tips for helping and working with people who are new to technology? How do you handle that, especially in large groups?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, part of it, when I'm teaching on YouTube, obviously I'm not 100% sure who is going to be there and what their background is with that technology. So I do, at the core, try to make it as accessible as possible to everyone. When I am running an actual training, so I've done a few live training sessions and I have some recorded sessions as well as Q&As for my students, that's something where I will try to meet them where they are. So I'll try and learn a little bit about their background, if they've used it before or not. And if I have to kind of go back to basics, I think that's okay, because even someone who is a little bit more advanced and comfortable, it's just a refresher for them, which I don't think is ever a bad thing. But I have had the compliment that there are some people who are not very tech savvy, and they have said to me that I've made it a lot more understandable. And I take that really as a huge compliment, because I know it can be really challenging to adopt some of these new technologies.
Okay, hopefully this is a better a better picture this time. Sorry about that. Sometimes technology gets away from us during presentations, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
So I have the natural question. What do you do when something technically goes wrong?
So I usually laugh and roll with it, because what else can we do? I mean, tech is going to go wrong. Now, I'm a naturally pretty smiley person anyway, and I will laugh at things. But I do think that your response to the tech going wrong is going to inform how the audience feels. If you've ever seen someone just flat out panic and you just have this furrowed brow and they look really nervous and they're just, oh God, what's happening? What's happening? It dissipates and it leaches out to the people who are watching, and then they start to feel that way, and then they have this reaction. So I think really trying to stay calm, like that calm duck on the top of the water, but they're actually paddling like mad underneath the surface, trying to do that. But also, one of the things that I try to get across is not getting caught up in all of the bells and whistles without learning some of the fundamentals of how you can be engaging even without any of the tech. If it was just you on a phone showing up into a Zoom call, could you still keep people's attention? Can you still make eye contact? Can you vary the pitch and pace and tone and volume of your voice so that you keep it interesting and you keep people paying attention? Those are all excellent skills as well. So when you know your message, you're confident in what you're teaching, you don't necessarily need all of that extra stuff. And so people will often get caught up and then they really feel lost. But if you can hone those skills, practice those fundamentals of engaging with your audience, keeping it interesting, keeping their attention, then if something goes wrong, you can rely on those and have something to fall back on with confidence.
That sounds like a great answer.
Yeah, that's kind of like when you're learning to play an instrument, there's such an emphasis of just learn the note, how to play the note well, and then come back and you can start to get fancy with all the notes. So it sounds like that's a great metaphor for what you're describing here too, with being on video, is just get the basics. and then come back to the fun stuff.
So
with regards...
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask Kat, with regards to in person versus being online, what are the gains? What are the gains online and what are the losses online?
Oh, interesting question. So I would say, obviously, one gain is that you can reach people from all over. They don't have to travel. I mean, the amount of people that I've been able to connect with, or even me as a participant, joining sessions with people from Europe and Asia and Australia, New Zealand, all over the world, that's really exciting that we can kind of break down some of those borders and be able to make connections. So obviously that is a really, really strong one. And there's no travel time for people. They can sit down, they can consume content, they can learn something. I also think the visual elements, the fact that you can bring in playing a short clip really easily, having these overlays, having these slides. Yes, you can have those in person, but you can really get creative with them in an online environment. And then also for different types of learners, you can be using those different mixes of modalities so that you're maximizing how people can consume and take in your knowledge. I would say the drawback is definitely that you cannot replace that in-person connection. Even just being in a room is a social connection. Even if you don't talk to someone, when you're together in a room, that's actually part of, if we look at a student context, for example, when schools were first trying to replicate learning from a classroom into an online environment, what they noticed is there was content, there was a teacher, but there wasn't necessarily any built-in social connection, so you had to create that because people felt detached from that scenario. Whereas if you're actually just going and you are sitting in a classroom, just being in the presence of other people is that social connection. And that is lost in the online environment. So you can't really replace it. And I'm not going to lie, I'm excited to get back in some rooms with some people when it's safe to do so. I'm excited to go to a conference. I'm excited to sit down and have coffee with people or be in a small workshop room together. But that being said, there are still a lot of advantages to having this option to run a really well done, engaging presentation online.
That's great. You mentioned to have a cup of coffee, and I got to just bring this up. One of the things that Kat does to allow us to say thank you to all the efforts that she does, she's a part of the, I forget what it's called now. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out.
Buy me coffee.
Yeah, that's the name of it? Yeah. So it's a nice site where you can just, put in a few bucks and buy somebody a cup of coffee for their efforts. And I'm assuming that you probably on your YouTube show with your show notes and things like that, you probably have links to things like that.
Yes, I do. I have it in the description. So if someone is, scrolling around, they will see it. I don't publicly advertise it. It's not something I put out there. But if someone ever says, I don't think I necessarily need to buy your course or your overlay, but I want to show some support, I would love to, like, you are helping me so much. Is there anything I can do? And it's a nice outlet for people. I felt really weird about it at first when I found out this was a thing. Yeah. But then I did find that there were people who said, you have helped me. Is there anything I can do? There's that reciprocity, and people like to show their appreciation. And so that is one option. The other thing I'll tell people is, just spread the word. Tell someone else about my channel. That's another way to also pay me back somehow if you feel that reciprocity and you'd like to do something. That's actually almost more powerful than buying a coffee, but I like a coffee here and there. Yeah,
and you do have quite a few subscribers, over 5,000 already. And for business type content, I think that's actually astronomical. There's so many business type things that only have a few hundred followers. So the fact that you're well over 5,000 and still growing, I'm assuming, congratulations to you on that. Do you have a vision for where you're headed with this whole process of helping us all do better presentations?
So it's a good question. So first, I do want to say thank you for the subscribers. I didn't expect that when I pivoted my business at the start of the year. Just January is when I thought, I'm going to focus on this and just start teaching this and hope that I help some people. And so that has obviously resonated, and I'm so grateful for that. when it comes to what the future holds, something I am genuinely really interested in is continuing to develop those presenting and speaking skills. So not just virtual, but how do you just come across as your best self? How do you speak in a way that gets people's attention and that, makes people drawn to you? And so I'm starting to learn about the elements of voice, how you can moderate your voice and how you can use pitch and tone and volume. And so I'm starting to invest a little bit more time learning about that realm, because I think there's always going to be a need for people to want to elevate their speaking and to come across really clearly and in a way that they're proud of. Because I know for many people, public speaking is terrifying. So how can you make that better? How can you continue to work on that? And so that's an area that I personally am starting to spend a bit more time with the hope that I can teach others what I learn.
Yeah, well, that's great. And actually, all three of us have taken some kind of training in public speaking just to help our nerves in some way, shape, or form. And you had mentioned the fact that you were a part of LIDA. That certainly helps people to become more comfortable on camera, too. So, yeah, I agree with that. Christine, you have any last questions for her? I know her time is short and we need to get her to her next gig.
No, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today, Kat. Lots of insights, and look forward to that cup of coffee, right? Or in my case, I would say give my dog a bone.
And well, that's the fun thing about that website is you can customize it. People can say, buy me a beer. You can say, buy my dog a dog treat. I don't know if you can actually change who the recipient is. So it might say, buy me a dog treat, but
Marty, how about you? Any last thoughts or questions?
Yes, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you, Kat. One of the things I want to thank you so much for bringing out is that our audience, sometimes they don't even know what they don't know. They might think they're doing wonderful presentations, but sometimes they have to step away from it and look at it like they're their audience and say, what could I get out of this? What did I get out of it? What more can I get out of it? So thank you so much for bringing up so many wonderful points. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to all of you today, especially about this topic, because I love it.
It is fun when you can talk about something you're passionate about, that's for sure. And you have certainly been of great help to a lot of people. So folks, if you want to get in touch with her, just type in her name, Cat Mulvihill, in Google or anywhere else. I mean, she is like the only one that exists with that name. So
that's not true. There's a random YouTube video of a woman with my name in Las Vegas trying to, it's really funny actually. She's trying to apply for some sort of reality show. And my friend sent it to me last summer and I thought, oh dear Lord, this is not ideal when someone types my name. But I think I've managed to put out enough content to maybe push her a little bit lower down.
Nice.
Oh, that's fun. Well, Kat, thank you so much for joining us. I hope we can have you back again sometime in the near future.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, next we want to get into our book review, and it's on the similar topic. We're going to be talking through, once again, how to make that engaging presentation. So here's the book review.
Hello, today I am going to share with you, save you some time on the next great book to read to help improve your speaking and leading. This book is called Boredom's Slayer by Rich Mulholland. It is a speaker's guide to speaking like a pro. Stick with me. I'm going to share the 2 lines that are a great setup for an awesome elevator pitch to make you soar where you want to go in your leadership, communicating, and business needs. Rich Mulholland's book is more of a changing the lens on presenting. It does give some information on exactly an outline of how to write a speech, what points to address. It addresses some of the misinformation, untruths about presenting. It gives you some presenting cues. A couple of things that I want to point out that he talked about in the book is not only speaking is leading, but when you're speaking, to be authentic to the type of presenter that you are. Your audience can tell when you are trying to act differently, and you're going to lose some credibility with that. Far better to be an authentic presenter, be courageous in who you are, and have a stronger connection with the people that you connect. The great speaker uses analogies to connect with their audience to help them internalize a message. Don't use storytelling just to entertain. The whole goal in presenting is to send a message, and often that is leading in a direction. So you want to use your storytelling to help internalize a message. Regarding that elevator pitch, here's 2 phrases to consider in using the elevator pitch. You know when you, and then fill in the blank. And then the next part is, well, what I do is. For example, if you consider the why of who you're trying to connect with in your elevator pitch, you will say, you know when you are drinking a glass of water and wondering if that water has more than just things that are good for you in it. And then you follow up with the, well, what I do is. Well, what I do is investigate water sources to, and then so on. So you know when you is the why to connect with your person that you're trying to connect with. And then the well, what I do is the succinct statement that tells how you can help them. Super easy elevator pitch to consider using in the future. Next week, we'll talk through the 4 points that Rich Mulholland outlines in how to write and present a great speech that connects your audience from the beginning to the end and really gives a powerful message.
Excellent.
Hey,
Excellent.
yay. I like that little ending.
Yeah.
The mic drop moment.
He's a super fun presenter, Rich Mulholland. He's a Scottish guy. He speaks in plain language, and it comes through in his writing.
Yeah, Marty, what did you think about this whole?
Well, I was writing the name of the book down right away because that's another book I want to buy. Everything that you recommend, Christine, is phenomenal. I think that we cannot get enough tips from other speakers. Their little secrets, the thing that works for them. And what we end up doing is we grab the best of what other people are saying and we mix it in and put it in our own words and make it work. I think that's tremendous. I loved everything you just talked about.
So, guys,
we all go silent.
Yeah, well, those things happen. Sometimes we have to be thinking, right? One of the things, though, I notice is that when we were talking with Cat, we were talking about it from a presentation standpoint. When we started talking about this book, it also is a form of a presentation because whenever we find ourselves in that elevator pitch type moment, it's still a form of presentation. And I think the thing that was mentioned by both Cat as well as Christine is that the more authentic you are in both of those scenarios, the better off you are because they can see who you really are. What are your thoughts, Christine?
Oh, 100%, right? His example in the book was talking about how when he started out with his company Missing Link, at first he tried to wear the suit and show up in the office and talk, and he realized that wasn't working. And so he's like, I just went back to my regular t-shirt and stuff, and it was actually jarring enough that it helped connect with people more, and he got more of a toehold, if you will, with the people that he was trying to connect with. Yeah,
that's a good point. Marty, what are your thoughts on the topic?
This about, I guess I'm still floored with the idea of being able to add this to my normal speech.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was writing it down while you guys were speaking.
You should cheat and play the rewind back, and then watch it later.
Yeah, I know. Well, when it's that exciting to me, I've got to put it down right away.
You know, that's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing to do. But anyway, our time is up anyway, so that was your last chance to say something valuable.
Oh, well.
Hey, no,
I've got next week.
Thank you again, Marty, for your humor today. I got to say, this thing about the pig, that was a very, I don't know, I constantly laugh. Whatever you come up with, it's always funny. But I got to say, this was the most peculiar of stories. And Christine, thank you for sharing with us the book today. I really appreciate that. And at this point, folks, we got to say goodbye. Our time's up. Have a great week.
All right. Bye-bye.